Okay, in these problems we're going to solve equations that involve these inverse functions. Right? Note that if something says find the exact solution, the implication is that you're going to need to be doing this and showing your work without a calculator, right? Without a graphic display calculator. Okay, so how would I solve this? Well, 3 arc sine of x equals pi. Well, that would mean that the arc sine of x is equal to pi over 3. Which, if I want to think about this as undoing, right, how do I undo the arc sine? I can undo the arc sine by using the inverse, and that would mean that x is equal to the sine of pi over 3. Right? Really what I'm working through is just the process of working with inverses. Right? So arc sine of x equals pi over 3. Undo the arc sine by taking the sine of both sides. So what's the sine of pi over 3? And we know that the sine of pi over 3 is root 3 over 2. And that is my solution. What if I look at this one over here? Right? Very, very similar problem. How does it get solved? Well, my first step could be to divide both sides by 3. Divide this side by 3, divide this side by 3, then I would get that the inverse sine of this angle, x plus 1, is equal to pi over 6, because pi over 2 divided by 3 is pi over 6. Now, notice over here I used arc sine and arc sine. Over here I switched it up. If you're more comfortable writing it like this, that's fine. If you're more comfortable writing it like that, that's fine. But you need to make sure that you're doing the correct work with the correct notation. Okay? So after this, what would be my next step? Well, my next step would be to undo the inverse sine. How do I do that? Use the inverse of the inverse sine, which would be to take the sine of both sides. Right? Take the sine of this side, that undoes the inverse sine, I'm left with x plus 1. Take the sine of this side, I have the sine of pi over 6. So then what does that mean? X plus 1 needs to equal 1/2, because I know that's the sine of pi over 6, which then leads me to x equals negative 1/2 as my answer, right? Because 1/2 minus 1 is negative 1/2. Okay? You've got a couple of additional problems that you can practice on your own. Make sure that you're asking questions for clarification where needed.